Driving the culture forward. This is Hypebeast Radio. My name is Ben Rosen. Today we have a very special episode. We're sitting down with comedian, actor, writer, producer, occasional national security threat, Canadian, and probably my best-known celebrity doppelganger, Seth Rogen.
There you
How
go.
are you
Yeah.
How you
If
doing,
I
man?
cared more about my hair, you're how I could look. That's what I've.
And so,
if I was better groomed, it's nice. It's aspirational.
I am flattered. So we're sitting here today. We're at the 11 Howard Hotel in Soho. And so leading off, we kind of want to talk about Hilarity For Charity right off the bat. That's
Great.
the latest project you have. It's a charity event. I guess you could probably tell us a little bit better. What was the genesis of Hilarity For Charity?
We've been doing it for 6 years. We've had these events. Basically, my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's, and we started dealing with it, me and my wife, when we were in our mid-20s, basically, which was something we never thought we would be dealing with at that age. And it was something that no one we knew was talking about, and that no one in the culture really seemed to be talking about that much, and just didn't seem like something that was getting a lot of attention at all. And so... And also, like, it's a very depressing disease. There's no cure. There's no treatment at all. So we just felt like we had no recourse or nothing to do. So we were like, we'll throw a comedy show and we'll give the money to Alzheimer's charities. And slowly it grew. The first one we did was almost 10 years ago, and we had Aziz Ansari performed and Hannibal Buress, and Bruno Mars was the headliner, and it was like a pretty great show. And then it kind of grew and grew over the years and slowly became like a legitimate charity organization. And we partnered with Netflix this year to try to bring it to just as big an audience as possible. And it seemed to go pretty well. And I hope, that we get to keep doing stuff like that. I mean, spreading the word has been important and a challenge, and I feel like we've even seen the needle move a little bit culturally in the time that we've been out there like advocating for it.
And you mentioned that you got a whole bunch of people to do this year's one, especially. There was, I think, like we were talking earlier, Post Malone is in it, Tiffany Haddish, a lot of, and the Muppets are in it.
The Muppets are in it, yeah.
And so,
John Mulaney and Kumail Nanjiani, Sacha Baron Cohen, Michael Che, Sarah Silverman, Michelle Wolf, who's super, super funny. Yeah, it's crazy who's willing to come
ensemble
support
cast.
Alzheimer's. I mean, it's exactly, it's hard also because, like, my sensibility is not one that one would generally associate with a charity event in any way, shape, or form. And I think that was something also that we wanted to do was I kind of wanted to make a charity event for people who the last thing in the world they ever thought they would want to do was watch a charity event.
Right.
And to try to really make it play against type as much as possible and just feel like a big, crazy comedy show. And then we kind of hopefully like lull you into an emotional place by kind of springing some kind of reality on you at one point, and then we kind of bring you back out of it. But I kind of wanted it to have all those elements basically.
And like you said, it kind of cuts through the stuffiness of the usual like charity fundraiser atmosphere.
Yes.
This is a special with a lot of dick jokes in it.
There is. I smoke a vape pen through my pee hole at one point, which I can't do, but
in real life.
Wouldn't surprise me if I heard kids were doing that though. In the show, I make a convincing case that I can do it though.
But because it's got all that material, is anybody a hard sell? Like, are the Muppets kind of like, nah, we can't do dick jokes? Like, is there
the Muppets did not do dick jokes. Yeah, with the Muppets, it had to be that they themselves, like the Muppets bits, there's a couple of them themselves are in no way dirty.
It's very wholesome.
Yes,
like,
they are full on in Muppet territory. Nor would I want to corrupt the Muppets with my dick jokes.
Yeah, thank God we kept Kermit 100%.
I did not try to mix those two things. Yeah.
So do you ask, like, how do you go about asking some of these like big names, these kind of like A-list celebrities and whatnot? Like, is anybody kind of a hard sell on it? Is anybody?
No, and almost all of them have participated in our events in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally 90% of the people have done other Hilarity for Charity events over the years. And the few people who hadn't were really cool, were enthusiastic. I mean, a lot of people honestly seem like somewhat happy that they have an opportunity to be charitable while doing the thing they would be doing anyway.
Right.
Like, I'm not asking them to go like build houses in, the middle of like nowhere. I'm, like they're doing comedy. And so I think it's nice to offer people sometimes an opportunity to be incredibly charitable while just doing the thing that they would already be doing, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that a lot of people have done previous Hilarity for Charity events, and you also, within your oeuvre, I guess is the word, but like you have movies where you work with a lot of the same people over and over again, from Freaks and Geeks onward, kind of. And so
for 20 years, I've worked with the same people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jason Segel, James Franco, Jonah Hill. Like, I've always wondered, are you guys as close friends in real life, or is that kind of like one of those, it's always on screen, but it's hard to get everybody in the same room now?
No, I'm very good friends with a lot of those people in real life. I just was in Joshua Tree with Martin Starr, who was on Freaks and Geeks. He's on Silicon Valley now. I literally was, Franco's one of my best friends. Siegel is someone, he moved to like Ojai, so he's not in LA as much, but I still see him when he's around. And John Daly I run into, and Busy is someone. Busy Phillips was on Freaks and Geeks. I talk to her. I see her quite a bit. I at parties and stuff like that, and we have a lot of friends in common still. And so no, Jonah, I see, like I see a lot of these people. Like,
are you aware of Jonah Hill's cultish following on social media for like streetwear and stuff like that?
Jonah's always, he's like from Los Angeles and has been a part of kind of like skater culture since the 90s, which is when, I'd say a lot of this kind of stuff kind of started. And I've always thought he was a good dresser. I'm glad to hear other people appreciate it.
But it's like there's like a cult. There's another podcast.
He's always out there with he's got good. He reps some solid brands.
Yeah. there's another podcast within like the whole streetwear world, basically, called Failing Upwards, and they have this thing where they do the Jonah Hill Fit Watch.
That's so funny.
Where, like, every paparazzi shot of him smoking a cigarette on the corner in a fancy hoodie, like they just throw it up there instantly.
No, you gotta. He represents.
I want to know if he knows, though. That's like the next thing.
Yeah.
But basing myself off that Freaks and Geeks question, what's sort of like the best part, the best pro, and the best con about working with people that you're like real life friends with?
The best part is that I only work with. I have a lot of friends who are actors who I don't work with.
Right.
Like, I don't just work with people because I like them. I work with them because they seem like they will be additive to the things that I'm working on. And to me, that's ultimately like the most important thing. Like, if I didn't like these people, I would still work with them because I think they're really talented and they work really well. We work well together, and so I think it's good because, for every reason I work with them, they're talented, they have good ethic, they try very hard, they're enthusiastic, they're passionate, they're collaborative. What's a bummer is, like, because everyone gets weird with work sometimes, myself included, and when you're friends with the person, it honestly makes it harder to deal with. Like, when there's no personal connection to someone and you're having a work issue, it's often much easier to deal with without, like, those emotions connected and without knowing that there's potential ramifications that spill out of the work and that could spill into your personal lives, And so... I'd say that those are the pros and the cons, and also, like, making movies and stuff is like, it's long days. It takes, you're often in some like weird city. So in those moments, being with people that you like a lot and know well, is really nice because, like, again, it's just having a job where you get to be around people you like is nice, but it's mostly the fact that I think they make the work itself better. And if anything, sometimes it is a little uncomfortable working with your friends.
Now, segueing to someone, you mentioned people that we don't really know that well, someone that I don't know at all, and I don't know if anybody really knows who the hell he is, the Disaster Artist.
Yeah.
Do you have any Tommy Wiseau stories? What was it like working with Tommy Wiseau?
Man, it was interesting. It's not disappointing. He's not
He
one of
lives
those
up to the
guys.
hype.
Yeah, he's not one of those guys you meet and you're like, oh, he was more normal than I thought he would be. Like you meet him and he's 100% bizarre. I mean, there's like too bad. I was really nervous about him, honestly. Like as I was a producer on the movie, was kind of my main role, and so I was mostly just terrified that he would derail the process.
Start directing it.
Yeah, or just logistically hold us up. So here's actually what happened is funny, is contractually he had to be in the movie.
Right.
We had to shoot a scene with him in the movie. We didn't have to keep it in the movie contractually. We just had to film the scene with him in the movie.
Okay.
So... And that scene had to be with James Franco, who's playing him in the movie. And we kept telling him, like, if you would agree to do the scene with someone else, it has a much better chance of being in the movie. Because you and him in the same scene is inherently
illogical.
Weird, because you are you, and you can only be you. And even if you are trying to play someone who's not you, you're still you. And he was like, no, I want to be with James. And so we filmed the scene with him and James, and it was one of those things where it's like, as we're filming it, we're just like, this won't be in the movie, but we got to do it. So we film it, we cut the movie together, and we realize that we didn't legally clear the score from the movie The Room, like the orchestral score, the music, and after the movie was all done, we had to go back to Tommy and be like, we need, and he owns all the rights to everything to do with The Room. Yeah. So we're like, we need to license the score from you. And his first question is, how my scene in the movie turn out? How's my scene? And we were like, and he must have known, he must have realized that contractually he forgot to make it, that we had to keep the scene in the movie. So that was his first question. How am I seeing? And we're like, well, it turned out okay, but we technically, it's not in the movie anymore. And he said, well, if you want my music, then you have to put scene in movies somewhere.
Oh my God.
Which we did. But he, again, contractually didn't specify where it had to be. So after, like, literally completely at the end of the
marveled him?
Of the movie, we marveled him. Like, wait, like, not even. Marvel will run, like, a few main titles, and then the scene will, it's like, you got to sit there for, like, 15 minutes of shit to see the scene that isn't, and it is funny. And in a weird way, like, I'm kind of grateful it happened because, Tommy, God bless him, like, somehow got his
wish,
his stamp on the movie somehow. Like, he infiltrated it.
Did he get weird with Franco?
Not really. If anything, like, things would kind of, like, it seemed kind of cathartic for him in a weird way. It seemed like it was the end of, like, he felt like it was the end of his arc, kind of, or not even, like, he felt like it was a part of the arc. Like, I remember being at the premiere and looking at him, and there's, like, a lot of famous people there. It's at, like, the Chinese Theater in Westwood. Like, it's a big Hollywood movie premiere.
It's an event, yeah.
And I remember looking at him and, like, he almost was acting as though not only did he think this was all going to happen one day, he was a little annoyed it didn't happen a few years earlier. Like, there was no sense of, like, I can't believe this. It was more like, it's about time, which is exactly what Tommy is. That should be Tommy's attitude. Like, he's a madman, and that is the attitude fitting of a madman.
Speaking of madmen, perfect transition to my Kanye West question.
Oh, yeah.
You're one of the first human beings that heard Yeezus, I think. That was sort of the...
Well, the album that I had heard was it was almost entirely different stuff. Like, I don't know.
What was the story with that? You were in, like, a limo with him. I think you've told it a couple of times.
Yeah, the story was I was at the Mercer Hotel with my wife where I used to stay sometimes, and he would record there and stay there, and I think lived around the corner from there. And it was, like, pretty soon after we had done that video, the Bound video.
With you and Franco on the bikes?
Yeah, so it was after Yeezus.
Okay,
it would
so
have been the life of Pablo.
Okay.
Yeah. And he kept canceling. I was in Vancouver making a movie, and he kept canceling shows in Vancouver. He canceled like 3 of them, and I had tickets to every one. They kept rescheduling it, and he kept canceling it. And so I saw him in the lobby of the hotel, and it was just literally me and my wife were walking in, and he was there with the guy, and I'd met him a bunch of times over the years. we used to work out with the same trainer, and so we would work out together sometimes, which is hilarious.
What's it like working out with Kanye West?
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, it was. Is
it motivational?
He didn't like it as much as I did. He was not in it to win it. He was trudging through it like everyone else. But we started talking, and I was like, "Yo, I keep trying to see you in concert, and you keep canceling the show, and it's a bummer." And he was like, "Well, do you want to hear?" He's like, "I'll play you my new stuff right now if you want." And we were like, "Okay." And he had like a van, like a limo van, like one of those big like Mercedes like limo van
like a
things.
party bus kind of
thing.
thing.
Out front of the Mercer, and he brought us into it, and he had his laptop that he always carries around, and he like plugged it into the sound system. And he's like, I haven't recorded any of the lyrics yet, so I'll just do those live for you, and I'll just play the beats for you, basically. And he had like 16 tracks of beats, and he would like play it, and he'd be like, okay, and this part I haven't written, da-da-da-da-da-da, then I come in like, ba-da-ba-da-ba. And then he was just like rap for like 2 hours in our faces.
You
like
got the fucking concert, though.
Yeah, we got a personal 2-hour Kanye West concert.
And do you guys still work out together? Is that like someone that you've seen recently, or is he kind of like...
I haven't run into him in a while, but I did see a show in L.A. with the floating stage, and it was fucking incredible. I love it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so Kanye should definitely text you, reignite that friendship.
Hit me up. Yeah. No, I mean, but I love Kanye. I'm a huge fan of Kanye's. Like, and I always have been, and I'm happy.
You're a big rap fan, too. Like, you've kind of like, like a pronounced Wu-Tang fan. You've worked with the RZA a couple of times.
Like all white Jewish people.
I think that it's a genetic thing.
It is.
Once you reach 13 years old.
There is a gene, yeah.
And so, and you had Post Malone in the special as well. So what's it been like? What's it like working with rappers? Is that sort of like something that has been funny for you?
It's interesting. Musicians in general are psychotic.
Yeah.
I find, and have a much worse grasp of reality than other people in the entertainment industry, from my experience with them. And I think it's because they're 100% insulated. Like, they're almost never doing something
normal
that they kind of don't want to be doing, or that's normal, surrounded by normal people. Like, the most famous actor, like Tom Cruise, acts in a scene with just some guy sometimes, like in every Tom Cruise movie there's a scene where for 12 hours he's just acting in a scene with like some day player who he's never met, who isn't famous, who is just a guy. And on a movie set there's electricians and carpenters and painters, and they're a real significant sometimes they're a much more important part of the scene than you are as the actor.
Right.
The guy moving the camera is more important than you are often. The guy who's cueing the explosion is more important than you are often. The guy who's shining the light through the window is more important than you are sometimes. So as an actor, actors are also insane for the most part and have a very terrible sense of where they lie in the world, and heavily equate the way they are treated with their own success, which is very unhealthy behavior. And I think, but even I think the most famous actors have to interact with like regular people from time to time, and musicians never ever have to do that. They never have to interact with regular people. They are always surrounded. They all roll with like crazy entourages. That completely insulate them from every interaction with any normal person, and their job doesn't really require them interacting with normal people.
And I feel like if you interact with fans, those aren't normal people in that moment.
No, they're people that are just like
freaking out,
like jizzing all over you. Like, that's not normal. Yeah, like that's not normal at all. And so, but I don't find rappers, honestly, to be any crazier than any other musicians. Like, we've worked with other pop stars, and some of them are incredibly nice and awesome. Like, we've had Miley Cyrus in a few of our things, and Snoop is like one of the most normal guys, and like isn't surrounded by 1,000 people, and seems to have probably, like, as he's gotten older, like scaled back a lot of that stuff, and now he's just happy like sitting in sitting in a trailer smoking weed with like one person. And like it just seems like but musicians in general.
Who's the craziest musician? Like, there's got to be like a...
I don't know. Like, the ones I can't even... I went to the Grammys once, and it was, like, super interesting, because I've been to, like, the Oscars a bunch of times, and I've been to a lot of these award shows, and, like, the Grammys was, like, so different from any other award show, because, like... Because of all, like, the security. I remember just standing there holding a drink, and, like, a guy just, like I got shoved by, like, Beyonce security guard that night. Lil Wayne security guard almost killed me just because I was trying to go up and say hi to him.
Lil Wayne?
Yeah, like, Lil Wayne. Like, like, a little, I was like, hey, Lil, and then just like, boom. Like, and that night, I remember, like, Eminem was there and invited me into his dressing room. And like, I had a beer, and they were like, oh, you can't even bring that in there. There was like, Eminem can't even look at beer? Oh, no. Like, that's crazy. Like, it was just like the level of infrastructure set up around each person was staggering. Yeah. It was just, like, truly remarkable how it was like, oh, like, each of these people has an entire, like, company's worth of infrastructure that surrounds them at all times. You know, but again, yeah, and then some of them seem to cut, because then, like, I live in Malibu, and I see, like, Miley Cyrus at, like, the coffee shop, just, like, alone with her.
At Erewhon.
Yeah, literally, just, like, and it almost seems like she's come out of it on the other side a little. I feel like people, maybe when they first have access to all that stuff, and then some of them are just so famous that they need it. And I think like Beyonce can't, like, walk around. Like, she needs 100 people surrounding her. And I think other musicians maybe see that and they're like, oh, I want that. But they don't need that. But they want it. You know what I mean?
Until it's real.
Exactly. It's really interesting. Yeah. Musicians are a strange breed, and actors are, like, blown away by musicians. Like if it's 10 of the most famous actors in a room and a musician, they all, like, come in and they all turn into, like, blubbering, like, fanboys.
They turn into
you know what I mean?
fangirls,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And who's the most normal of, like, the artists that you, like, surprisingly? Like, Snoop Dogg, I think.
Miley Cyrus is incredibly normal. Snoop Dogg is incredibly normal. Like, I think... you know, I like a lot of the Wu-Tang guys are very, Method Man is very low key. And, like, again, like, I gauge it for me as just like who has 1,000 people around them and who has maybe one or two people with them. Yeah. That to me is like, and again, there's maybe a few people that need those 1,000 people with them, but there's like 2 or 3 of those people on the planet, and nobody else really needs 1,000 people around them. Even Kanye doesn't go around with 1,000 people. He, like, drives himself to work. It's not like he, to me, is kind of normal, you know, is on the less insulated side of things, interacting with, I see him at the coffee shop I go to sometimes, and he's just there, like, buying coffee. Like, it's not like he has, like, 1,000 people around him going to do it, you know what I mean?
One of our guests on here is, like, he works for Kanye, and we were talking about that in one of the interviews. It was like, or I think it was before we started recording, and I asked him, I was like, do you guys just hang out? Is it just kind of like a business relationship? Like, what is that like? And he was like, man, like, we were at some office, and he basically was like, you know, man, sometimes I forget that you moved across the country to work here. Yeah. Like, he had, like, this moment, like, as a boss, like,
that's
he was like,
so nice.
shit, man, you picked up and came all the way over here for me. That's awesome. And
that's
then he was
really
like,
nice.
I've been, do you want to go to a movie?
Yeah.
All I've been doing lately is working out and going to the movies with my wife. So if you want to go to the movie, and I was like, that's the most normal. That's like a friend, like, asking for a bro date. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I think he's oddly normal.
Very normal.
Yeah,
like, he's literally become a Calabasas dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. So, yeah, musicians, though, are, like, it's fascinating to me. And I like working with them, you know, like, and I like putting them in our stuff, and I like having them on our sets. Like, it's cool. Like, it just, they bring a completely different energy. But yeah, I was with, like, Travis Scott interviewed me a few years ago, and I was, like, in the studio with him a little bit. That's, like, where you hang out with musicians, in the studio, which is funny. It'd be like if you only hung out with actors on movie sets. Yeah, exactly. That's what's funny about musicians, is, like, they invite you to watch them work, like, socially, kind of, which is interesting. But yeah, and I remember, like, honestly, mostly I remember thinking is, like, it's just so loud. Like, it's just so loud.
There's so much weed here.
The weed I can deal with. It's just loud.
And again, a good transition for my next question. There's a joke in the special where you say something along the lines of Steven Spielberg never took me seriously as an actor after he saw me smoke a joint.
Yeah.
Is that, first of all, what's the story behind that? And my question off that is, do you think, and I've watched most of your movies, I grew up watching them, and I smoked a lot of weed watching your movies. Do you think that weed helped or hindered you as a creative?
I mean, okay, wait, which one first?
The Spielberg story first.
The Spielberg story is my wife remembered it better than I did, actually. We were at a party. I can't remember which one, but it was like a Hollywood party with a lot of famous people at it, and we were in like an outside like big balcony. It was at a hotel, and we found like a staircase to kind of go down outside that like kind of looped around the corner, and like a few of us were gonna smoke a joint, and then it was one of those things where it was almost like your parents, like Spielberg, kind of like peered around the corner and like saw us smoking a joint at the bottom of the stairs, and then like came down the stairs kind of like a dad, and we're all just like, oh no, he's coming. And he did just want to come down and talk, but there was like this unmistakable feeling that we had been busted.
Fuck.
And that he kind of didn't think it was that cool, and almost like he was scoping out who was there smoking weed, which I probably am like 100% projecting onto him. And I would never doubt that the real reason Steven Spielberg never works with me is because I'm not as talented as the people he puts in his movies. But I think that it was more a joke, but that did happen. Steven Spielberg did catch me smoking weed, and it did feel like my dad caught me smoking
Papa
weed.
Spielberg.
Yeah. And I don't know if weed has helped or hindered me, honestly. Like,
has it limited you, sort of? Like, do you feel like you got typecast as the stoner guy, or?
I mean, I produce and write most of the movies I'm in.
So it's your fault.
So if I felt like I didn't want to be doing that, I have an avenue to stop it. And like I don't know. I mean, to me, it was I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. Weed was always like a huge part of our culture and our lives. Like from the time I was young, the time I was 13 years old, 12 years old, like it was so easy to buy weed, and it was pretty much culturally acceptable. I remember there would be like competing weed dealers at the 7-Eleven across the street from our high school every Friday after school. Like a few of them, like
right.
You had your choice, and they would just, I remember it was $10 a gram, and you would give them like $30, and they would give you like their backpack with like different kinds of weed in it and shit like that. And this was in like the fucking early 90s.
Yeah, that's standard now.
And we had like purple weed and red weed and weed with hairs on it and crystals in it. Like it was shit that after I moved to LA, I didn't even see for like, it took years for them to catch up.
Right.
Like we were smoking really good weed, and it was something almost everyone did. And then when I started making movies and shit, I was like, why is it such a weird, like it seemed so taboo, and it seemed like, if characters in movies were smoking weed, it was like something that defined them solely as idiots, basically.
Yeah.
And that defined them as 100% losers and like non-productive members of society. And I remember 40-Year-Old Virgin was the first like R-rated movie we were making that I was a producer on it, and I was in it. And there was a scene where I was like, why don't we smoke weed in this? It was me and Paul Rudd playing video games, and I was like, why don't we pass a pipe back and forth?
No, I know you're
and
gay.
It was actually, and it was like, I think the first time maybe in any like mainstream movie where characters were just casually smoking weed and there was no mention made of it. Like it wasn't the point of the scene. It didn't define us as idiots. Other things were defining us as idiots. The weed was not the thing defining us as idiots. And it was like a huge kind of like revelation for me, where I was like, oh, it's just not a part of mainstream movies unless it's like Cheech and Chong,
Harold and Kumar.
or Harold and Kumar. And then we made Pineapple Express, which to us was like, what if a weed movie was like a real movie, basically?
Yeah.
Like, what if it wasn't? What if it had all the elements of a real movie? If it had action and excitement and a plot and a relationship and characters and it was, at the time, like, seemed crazy, honestly. Like, when people were like, oh, you want to make like a medium-sized budget weed action movie that like where the characters are stoned, but they also are the heroes, and there's not a very huge anti-weed message to it. It's just kind of the catalyst for things, and like it really, the time seemed crazy, and then it knocked up. I thought, it's the same thing. We smoke weed, and like it was just one of the things where I was like, me and my friends smoke weed. It's what we do when we hang out.
Yeah.
It's like some people have a beer, some people have coffee, we smoke weed. Like it's always been kind of like one of the things that is going on in most social situations that we are in. It felt dishonest to not include it in some way.
How did it feel when they actually named a pineapple, like a strain, Pineapple Express, after the movie? Was that like you made it? Was that
it made me really regret not trademarking the name Pineapple Express for a strain of weed. But you can't trademark names of weed strains because it's not federally legal, I don't think so. I remember when we were writing the movie, we said like, if one day there is an actual strain of weed called Pineapple Express, it means we did a good job at this, because there wasn't, and now there is. So we did a good job. We invented a weed.
And I'm one of my favorite things, like I do a deep dive of research and stuff, and I found out that your first movie is your first speaking role, I think, in film is Donnie Darko, right?
Yeah, that was my first role in any movie.
And your first line in any movie is "I like your boobs."
I like your boobs, yeah.
Which has got to be the most emblematic. Like that's your whole.
Yes,
career.
it was
they did
all,
it. They summed it all
stage
up
right there.
You knew it.
100%.
And so, as someone that smokes weed, as someone that likes movies, as someone that likes boobs, do you ever rewatch Donnie Darko? Do you get it?
I actually have not seen that movie since it came out, which was a very long time ago. I remember being like halfway through filming. The director had a party, Richard Kelly, the guy who directed the movie, and we were all there. We were super fucked up, and I remember going to him, like we were just talking, and I was like, I gotta be honest, like I don't get the movie very much, and it like spun him out and like sent him down a hole. He was just like, I don't think anyone's gonna get it. I was like, he's like, you're not the first person. He's like, in my head, it's clear. I didn't want it to be a movie people don't get, and I was like, no, I think it's cool. I think it'll be one of those things where people kind of
people have questions.
People will interpret it and question it in different ways. And he was like, fuck, I just want people to get it. And I was like,
it's like The Room, dude.
That ship has sailed, man. It's super confusing. But I didn't. I remember at the time thinking I don't quite get this, but now I think I get. I think it's one of those things. Also, like enough people have talked to me over the years about it, and I stayed friends with Richard Kelly, and I see him every once in a while, not that often, but I think I get it now.
We'll revisit it in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And to talk about the interview for a quick second,
yeah.
How scary is it to go from the guy that's making dick jokes in the movie to being at the center of a national security kind of like the Sony hack and the North Korea scandal? Was it weird? Was it like it all happened overnight? Did you know that you were courting that kind of controversy?
Yeah, 100%. We made a movie antagonizing like one of the most evil guys in the world. So we were very aware of what that could, we were aware of what that could lead to, and I thought everyone who was on board was aware of that. It was a bummer. It's one of those things that's taken a long time to process, I think, exactly what happened, and I think it took some time to get away from it to kind of give us perspective on it, the immediate thing was it just sucked because we had a movie that was going to come out in theaters that we'd been working on for a really long time that was going to do well, which is not something that happens all the time and not something we take for granted. Mm-hmm. And then that was like taken away, it didn't get the release it was supposed to. And so the like immediate thing that just sucked about it was that we were kind of robbed of what was going to be a very positive experience in our lives, in our careers, in that we were going to have a movie that we liked, that was very edgy and controversial, and it was going to do well, and then that didn't happen. It was taken from theaters, and then, people love to run with a story. It was one of those things that was really interesting. Like, I'd never been the center of like a real news. I mean, and that's like a term I use loosely, real news story. Like I'd never been the center of something that not just entertainment media was talking about, that the president was talking about, that that CNN and BBC, and we were the kind of the front page of every like news website and paper almost in the world for a little while. And so it was weird. It was weird, and I didn't know what to do. And at the end, I got really good advice from Sacha Baron Cohen, who's a very good friend of mine, who just said, "Don't say anything. Just fucking keep working." And that's exactly what we did. Like, I started filming the Steve Jobs. Like, it all happened like in around Christmas, and then by like a few weeks into January, I was in San Francisco filming the Danny Boyle Steve Jobs movie, and then we shot the pilot for Preacher a couple in March or April or something like that, and then we just kind of kept rolling, and what's weird is in the end is I honestly don't think North Korea are the ones who hacked into Sony. Like, I think it was an inside job, like
a leak.
Yeah, I think it was someone who had like a vendetta against someone, and I think like North Korea offered a good scapegoat or just a good way to blow the story up even more. I don't know. Like, the more time I get from it, honestly, the less it seems like that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And your production company, Point Grey, that's the name of your high school, right?
Yeah.
And that high school has produced a shitload of comedians and comic actors. Like, it's like you, I believe, isn't Nathan Fielder an alumnus as well?
We were on the improv team together for years. I went to elementary school and high school with Nathan.
I found that out from Nardwar.
I've known Nathan forever.
Is there anybody else from the high school, or is it?
I mean, Evan Goldberg, who's my partner, went to that high school, and the guy Kyle Hunter, who we wrote Sausage Party with, and who is one of the creators of Future Man, went to the same high school with us. I think there's a woman named Jessie Cruikshank who went on to be like a pretty popular like host for MTV and stuff like that. Also went to high school with us. Yeah, it's weird. It was one of those things.
Like a talent camp.
Yeah, well, I think also like it was just it was a public high school. Like, we didn't have like an arts program or anything like that. I think in Vancouver, they like filmed a lot of shit, and they filmed stuff at our high school. Like, our high school is this beautiful old building that looked like a castle kind of. And so they would film stuff there. And I think that was one of those things that just like subtly put in people's heads, like,
this is a job.
This is a thing you could do. Like, it's not some like far off, unobtainable magical thing. It's like, you're like, oh no, they're doing it in our science class.
Yeah,
like,
very real.
it seems very real and very tangible. People's, not mine and not anyone I was even that good friends with, but some people in the school, or you knew, you're like, oh, their dad like directs commercials, or their dad does this, or their mom works for like this movie production company, and like it was one of those things that was just like around enough that I think it made it that pursuing it as a career didn't seem
wild,
like totally fucking crazy, basically.
And the reason I asked about the high school questions, we usually like to end on sort of a note where it's like, if you had like a time traveling machine, you go back, talk to the 13-year-old Seth, the Wu-Tang Clan super fan.
Yeah.
What sort of like sagely wisdom would you give him with the perspective of like current day Seth? What would be like the one piece of advice to get him on the right track or steer him in a different direction?
I wouldn't say shit.
Let's go back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm very happy with how my life has turned out, and if time travel movies have taught me anything, it's that any microscopic input could turn everything in a horrible direction. It could fuck everything up, and I don't want to do that. No, I don't know. Like, especially, like, I've been working since I was in high school. Like, I always knew what I wanted to do. I think that's what I was like as I've gotten older, is one of the things that I think I'm like most fortunate about, is that from the time I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to work in comedy and work in movies, and that was just like, I always had something that I was working towards, and I started writing Superbad when I was 13, and I started doing stand-up comedy at around the same time. So even the high school version of me was ferociously pursuing never having to get a real job, basically, and not having to, like, I mean, I didn't even graduate. I dropped out of high school because I started working, and I remember from a young age thinking, like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to, what am I going to do there? Like, it wasn't something that, I didn't waste a lot of time. As soon as I had the tools to start working towards my goal, I did, basically.
Maybe a better way to do it would be like you go back and just tell them it all works out. Your friends
just be cool, man. Yeah, just be cool. Yeah, invest in LaCroix.
I think that's a perfect
my
note.
Only advice to myself.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you for finding some time. Thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you, Levin Howard. We are good.
Nice.